horrendous, because the national parks encourage us to get in our cars and drive, and they are very committed to try and do something about that. So I think there is a model whereby, you know, you will arrive at the periphery of the national park and you will only travel within the national park through electric transportation, and it will be a combination of this sort of personal transportation, you know, electric buses, etc. So it's a huge opportunity. And you can imagine, we were speculating, I think, yesterday about, you know, maybe Jersey being an internal combustion engine-free zone. You know, I mean, why not? You know, it's not a technical issue; it's a political issue, and you could make those sort of decisions. The National Trust. This is one of our iconic sort of partners. The National Trust are committed again to renewables. You may or may not know that the National Trust are a major renewable energy supplier. Almost all of their locations either already have renewable energy, be it hydro or solar, or will have. They are making a big push towards supporting electric cars, both internally and externally, and we are currently installing charging stations at all those locations in Wales. Once those are finished, we fully expect to have every National Trust location in the UK. That will be massive, you know, because you drive there in your electric vehicle, you know, all of a sudden you can drive in, say, the Leaf, 70 miles away you can drive to the National Trust, knowing you're going to be able to charge when you get there, charge during the day while you're visiting the National Trust, and then just return. Huge. These sort of things are huge. And, you know, a £299 piece of kit. This is really, really... and I think this really shows you the power of these sort of projects. You know, if you get out and you really demonstrate what can be done, very, very powerful. Well, it's a bit unfortunate, obviously moved that one. But what that actually says is we're currently installing one global hotel brand. It's over 200 locations across the UK, and it's not yet announced, but you know, that's going to have a huge impact on the number of locations you can charge at. This brand know how important this space is going to be, and they want to be the go-to brand. So if you are an electric car driver, they want you to go to their brand, and they just get it. You know. Now, again, this is a purely business decision. They've looked forward and said, who do what are our customer base going to look like in 10 years' time? And they know that they're going to be, a significant number of them are going to own electric vehicles. And if they don't cater for that, then other brands will. So it's huge. These aren't any of those brands, but just some examples. You know, we've got a cheesemaker who are actually, they're trying to offset all of the carbon dioxide that they produce during the manufacturing of cheese and distribution of cheese. So they're distributing their cheese using actually a Renault Kangoo van. They're doing a lot of offsetting, and they're doing a really interesting project I can't probably talk about. But there's lots of great stuff going on, and then, you know, how varied the sites are. You know, iconic Scottish castle, absolutely beautiful location. I don't know if you've ever seen this. This young lady is actually on a wire, and she goes up and down this giant, you know, 50-metre tower to collect your wine, and that's at one of the Radisson hotels. Our Dynamic Earth, a very educational project in Scotland. You know, there's a whole range. Everything. You know, the Eden Project, another one. You know, all of these people are really committed to this and really, you know, investing heavily in this area. So what I wanted to do, we're just going to run a video now, and a new media person joined it, and he said, well, I'm going to run this story, but the thing I'm going to run that's different is that 900 miles cost us £20 in electricity, and we're going to run that story, and that story was picked up by everybody. You know, we actually had to recreate the event for the BBC. We had ITV there, you know, and what that really said to us is that it's not the fact that you can do this, but it's the fact that 900 miles for £20. You know, that's the key message that we need to really think about here, and that's huge. You know. So in terms of transition to electric cars, that's one of the key sort of messages that we want to think about.
Can I just ask you, Kevin, which medium was that? Somebody World?
The
The person who launched that and made that a national story.
To be honest, I can't remember. I could certainly find out for you. So having done that trip, the Geneva Motor Show came up, and there was a whole range of new electric cars that we wanted to go and visit. So we said, okay, well, let's go to Geneva. Well, you can't drive electric cars long way. That's a 2,000-mile round trip. You can't do that. Well, actually, you can. And this was our original schedule for doing it. It would in the end we didn't do this schedule because we were having such a great time. We actually stopped off on a couple of the locations on the way down. But we scheduled to do that drive. So that's 1,000 miles in 2 days with a night stop. And that is again all public charging. The German ones, 2 German locations, Emden and Saarbrücken, fully solar as well, so they're all powered from solar. So you can actually drive from Bath, where we're based, across, take the Channel Tunnel, and then down through Belgium, and again just using public charging. Extremely easy. Now that 2,000-mile round trip, that cost us £50. So again, a powerful theme there. In terms of what the realities of actually driving these vehicles are. And this trip, if I did this trip today, it's easier. Every single day this trip gets easier because more charging goes in. So you begin to get to the point that, for instance, in Brussels, the petrol stations have charging. So you can go to your local Shell garage and charge there if you wish. Lots of overnight locations have charging, restaurants have charging. So it's a huge thing that's actually happening out there. So it's important to sort of bear in mind this stuff's really happening. This is why we went to, or one of the reasons we went to Geneva. There was a big Tesla gathering in Geneva. I think there were 45 cars in the end, which was just a joy. It was an amazing event to see. One of these Tesla Roadsters has driven 250,000 miles. So that's a 4-year-old car done 250,000 miles, and it's only seen 10% of range degradation in the battery. So another thing comes up all the time: what's going to happen with the batteries? Well, there are cars out there that have done phenomenal miles, and are actually performing much better than was originally anticipated. On the right is a view of us going onto the channel. We took lots of pictures of it's just like everything everybody else does. This is a car, and we were in a car going across the channel. So, it's just like the only difference is it's electric. That's it. But nothing else. That's the difference. We went up over the Alps, and electric cars surely can't go up hills. Well, we went up the Alps. It's cold. It's fine. It's fun. And it's just a total joy to do this sort of driving. You really can enjoy this. And again, we're doing that whole trip for £50. So the cost of it doesn't become a significant issue. So I'm a business owner. I've been in the sort of computer hardware and software engineering fields for, I guess, about 35 years. And I've worked for all the sort of major blue chip companies, Intel, Sony, people of that type, and I've done a lot of chip design, board design, computer design, so I have very much an engineering background. I started my first business in 1997, and I've been running businesses continuously since that time, the most successful of which is in the medical IT field, and we're headquartered in Portland, Oregon. And a lot of our products are embedded into major sort of medical systems in the US and Canada. And one of the things that I realised a very long time ago is that you get a lot out of people if you actually trust them and use what we call the sort of 21st century business model. If you could just excuse me a moment. Basically what that means is that we encourage everybody to work from home. We fully support them in doing that, and for lots of reasons: carbon reduction reasons, efficiency reasons, just the fact that you end up with employees that stay with you for a very long period of time. We also means that we can cherry pick employees. We have employees in Moscow and across the US and the UK. And it's a great model, and it's one of the projects that I hope that we will do a lot more within Zero Carbon World as we go forward. And indeed, Zero Carbon World today is, again, exactly the same sort of model. Lots of people working from all over the place to bring various disciplines to it. So about, I guess about 4 years ago, I started really thinking about what I was going to do next. Certainly the US business was getting big enough that I didn't need to be involved so much. So I thought that it would, what I really was interested in doing was something in the electric vehicle field and the renewable energy field, and trying to bring a sort of synergy between those two. And but I didn't want to do that as a commercial model. I've done enough business, and I really felt that doing something with the charity model would be very powerful and get me through a lot of doors. So we founded Zero Carbon World in 2010. And I'd spent a good 18 months thinking about specific projects, because I have an engineering background, as I said, and that meant that I really wanted to undertake projects that I could deliver. We all, talk a lot about the sort of issues that we face with climate change and carbon reduction and transition generally. But I was really interested, and I think many of those topics are well understood, but I was really interested in, what can I actually undertake, what can I do to actually make a difference? And one of the things that I settled on was electric vehicles, bringing electric vehicles to the mass market. And a bit later I'll talk about why, we would want to do that. But at the moment that was a project that I really interested in seeing that transition. And one of the key things that you get asked all the time is, where are you going to charge? It comes up every single time you have a conversation with somebody. And so what we decided to do was we were going to try and answer that problem by basically saying everywhere. And by meaning everywhere, what we said is, okay, well, what if your hotel or your bed and breakfast or your gym or your car park, what if those types of locations, or your office, had charging stations? What if the answer to it was just literally everywhere? There's charging everywhere. Then what that really does is that removes that whole question about where do you charge, because it's a very simple answer. So in order to make that happen, what I did personally is I purchased 800 charging stations. And to show you what a charging station is, there's a nice little prop, because we love to sort of do this sort of thing. So this is what we call a charging station. Fundamentally, they're plugs and sockets. It's electricity. There's a new European standard, of course, because we like to invent new standards. But this basically is what you need to charge your vehicle. So we went out and we purchased 800 of those, and then I donated those to Zero Carbon World so that it had stock in order to undertake its project. And its real project was to donate charging stations, and I'll talk a bit more about why we've gone down that route a bit later. Also, what we didn't want to do is to go out and ask people for money and then spend all that money on staff, because that's a very traditional sort of charity model. Instead, what we decided to do is actually to finance 4 people from one of my companies, and then to donate their effort to Zero Carbon World. So what it means today is that any monies that come into us are just spent on the projects. We don't have to spend them on overheads. There's no IT or anything, because it's all funded out from my other companies. And then the other thing that I'm very actively involved in, because I don't need to spend so much time in the office, is I get very involved with 2 other charities, Action Medical Research and Wherever the Need. So I also spend some time supporting them in various ways, and sometimes it just involves driving an electric car to support something they're doing, for instance. The other sort of things I'd say is, I am an investor in large-scale wind and solar, and have been for a very long time. So it's an area that I believe passionately in, and one of the ways of making things happen is to put money into it. And we have recently invested in a home solar PV system, partly because although we've bought renewable energy for the last sort of 15 years or so, we wanted to demonstrate what solar PV would actually do for a home system. And we live in a fairly sort of modest, semi-detached house near Bath, that many of you would recognise, next council house. and but we put a big solar PV system on. And if there's time, I'll maybe talk a little bit about the results of that system. And then in terms of electric cars, so you know, I'd always dreamed about owning a sports car. So when I made some money, I went out and I purchased a sports car. The difference was that it was a fully electric sports car, and it's parked outside, so we can talk a bit about that technology if you're interested. Basically, the Roadster, Tesla Roadster, represents the pinnacle of electric car development. Certainly, or it did 3 years ago. And what I can also do is show you where technology has gone in the last 3 years. But to just give you some idea, you know, an extreme performance car, 0 to 60 in 3.7 seconds, over 200 miles of driving range. You know, just a phenomenal car by any standards that you measure it. You know, if you're into cars, this is a car that will perform, you know, just like any other mainstream sports car. I've driven to date, in fact, just over 40,000 miles. So that's in 2.5 years, and it's my primary car. I use it for almost everything. There are very, very few occasions when I need to use a different car. And my partner Susie, who's here, she's also waiting to purchase. She currently drives a BMW Mini, and she's about to change that, we think, for the new Renault Zoe that I'll talk about later. So at that point, we will be completely electric, and actually we will power it from our home solar PV.